And I'm going to get started. So the topic today is leadership. And I'm sure you're probably looking at that and thinking, why are we talking about leadership, right? This is an internship. We're still undergrads, that kind of thing. But I do think that it's important for you to be familiar with and understand things from the leader's point of view so that when you are working for these people and you're starting to move into these kinds of roles, that you have a little bit more of a toolbox of how to interact and how to understand and how to actually build relationships with those leaders. So just thinking about that, just to get us started, could you think about a leader that you've worked with or worked for, and what are some of the really best qualities that you noticed about that person that you made you think of them as that's a really good leader? And share that with us.
I think a good leader is somebody who's understanding that there's like um different things going on, but also like a good leader is I feel like is very original too, like maybe not following like other people's perspectives or the way that they handle things. I think a good leader is somebody who's original, who can create something that knows that it would benefit like the whole group.
Okay, all right. Dean, what about you when we talk about a good leader, what comes to mind?
I think for me, just going off my own experience in the work field, I think that the best leaders, like what makes a good leader, um, their like ability to facilitate like good relationships within the workplace. Some of the best bosses I've had, they're able to sort of be people person, be yeah, a people person. They're able to be social with everyone. But they're also able to like bring us all together um within like the workplace, sort of make it, I know it's cliche to say, but sort of make it like a little family or like um make it feel not like work, but more so just like I guess a gathering of friends almost, just like in a work setting, if that makes sense.
Okay, interesting. JC, we're talking about the best qualities of someone that's a leader that you know that you've worked with. Can you think of any qualities that you would use to describe someone that you think of as a really good leader? Oh, I don't think he can hear me. Okay. All right. Uh, Sammy's coming in. So,
Sorry. I would say someone who's flexible, uh, and like understanding, but also like firm in expectations, while also like because currently at my internship, like people are there are still high expectations, but also people are understanding of the fact that like I don't know what's good. I'm not. I haven't been in the setting for very long, and so like I can't. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I'm not accustomed to all of the like ins and outs of everything that people who have been doing this for like 9 to 10 years are, and so like they're willing to help and educate, and yeah.
okay. All right. And Sammy, we're talking about right now the describing the best qualities of a leader that you are familiar with or you may have worked with or worked under. Can you hear me, Sammy?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you explain again
We're
what's
talking
going on?
about we're talking about leaders that you've known and you've worked with, and we're talking about what are the best qualities that you noticed in leaders.
Okay. So for me, leaders usually are on top of things, making sure that we have all materials and everything prepared ahead of time, making sure that we go through simple directions about what needs to be done, the plan agenda for like the rest of the day, as well as making sure that everyone's following the guidelines that the organization or company has in mind.
Okay, so I'm hearing a common theme between all four of you, where you're talking about relationships, you're talking about culture, you're talking about those interpersonal relationships, right? And setting the tone. And so, what, as I said in the beginning, that, leadership may seem like an unusual topic for this type of an internship seminar. But there's an important piece here that's, I think, as a young professional moving out into the world, you have to have some understanding of things from the leader's point of view. And then you also have to have some understanding of where you should be and how you should interact with leaders. So we're going to do a couple of things this morning. I'm going to start first of all with just a very short video introduction to the topic of leadership. How many of you are familiar with Simon Sinek? Okay, he's a pretty well-known speaker in terms of leadership, mainly in the business world, but he's really branched out into other areas as well. So this is a very short video. So let's start with that, and then we'll move on to a broader conversation. So let's start with Simon.
My friend Bob Chapman, when he was younger, he was having a crisis of faith. And so he went to his priest and he says, I don't think I believe in God. And his priest said, good thing God still believes in you. People come along at different times. Like, you can't force someone to have a conversion, or you can't force somebody to believe. If we don't know what their story is, we don't know that maybe they've worked for horrible people in the past. Maybe they've come from companies that had terrible cultures. Maybe they've been once bitten, twice shy. Like, maybe they're coming with their guard up. Like, I don't know what their experience is. I don't know what their story is. So just because we are well-intentioned and we're all like chipper and studying leadership, that we expect that they come in the first 3 weeks of their employment. How come you're not all in? Everybody else here is all in. Like, you got to meet people where they are. Some people jump right in head first and they're really excited when they come into a new culture. And some people are slower. Just let them come at their own pace, but you just keep doing the right thing. And most importantly, you got to be consistent, right? You can't just do it once or twice. You got to do it all the time. And it's the little things that add up more than the big things. So I always think the balance of intensity versus consistency. So intensity is something like this. You've come in for 3 days. It's an intense time. It's intense education. You're on and anything intense is easily measured and captured in time, right? But consistency is the little stuff that is innocuous and doesn't seem to do anything, like saying good morning, in the hallway. Well, that does nothing if you do it once, but what if you do it every day? Like, how long when did your wife fall in love with you? Like, I don't know. Like, it wasn't because you remembered her birthday or bought her flowers on Valentine's Day. Those are intensity. It's the little things you did. Like when you went to get a drink from the fridge and you just brought one back for her, or the game was on and she said, honey, can I talk to you? And you hit pause on the game and you said, sure, what's on your mind, right? Like little things like that in a vacuum do nothing, but when they add up, people fall in love. And it's the same in leadership. It's the little things. It's the brushing your teeth, not going to the dentist. You have to go to the dentist twice a year. That's intensity. But if that's all you do, your teeth fall out. So you can't just rely on the big rah-rahs, the big leadership things, the big coaching things. Very important. You got to brush your teeth for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, every single day. And it only works if you keep doing it. And that's what leadership is. It's the boring, mundane, daily, little things. And some of it is so easy. Some of it is so easy, right? Let me show you one of the easiest things you can do. Can I borrow someone's phone? Is there a phone I can borrow? Yeah, thanks. I'm going to show you something. I'll show you a little thing, right? So here I am. I'm sitting in my office, and you walk into my office. And while I'm sitting here, just now, right? Do you feel, I'm not making a phone call. It's not buzzing. It's not beeping. I'm just holding it. Do you feel like you're the most important thing to me right now? No. Right? There's a deep-seated psychological reaction to the device. I'm not doing anything. So when we show up to a meeting and we put the phone on the table, and by the way, putting the phone face down is not more polite, right? How do you think it makes people feel? Makes them feel that they're not the most important thing right now. If somebody walks into your office and is just on the desk, how do you think it makes people feel? Employees or patients? Or worse, when somebody looks away and you're on it for 30 seconds, how do you think it makes people feel? Right? Put the phone away when there's another person that you want them to feel like they matter. It's so easy. Put it in a back pocket, put it on a shelf, put it in a drawer. Eye contact. Thank you very much. Can you catch? Well done. So, eye contact, right? Facing your body towards somebody. Hey, can I talk to you? Sure. What's on your mind? Right? Little things. Like I said, these things in a vacuum do nothing, but if you do them over and over and over again, I can tell you how powerful they are. A Marine once told me, he says his test for being a leader is if you ask somebody how they're doing, you actually care about the answer. How are you? It's been a hard day. Okay, cool. Well, I'll check you after lunch, right? No, how are you? Not doing so good. What's going on? Right? These are skills. They're very easy to learn, they're very easy to practice, but you gotta do them. And over the course of time, sometimes quicker for some people, sometimes slower for others, you will build an environment, you will build a culture where people feel seen, feel heard, feel like they matter, and you will watch them give you their blood, sweat, and tears to help your business grow. That's how it works.
What do you think about his comments?
I really liked that video. I almost wanna like I want to see if you could share the link so I could send it to my brother because I feel like he's always on his phone when I'm talking to him, but I could relate to Simon because I'm like very similar with that with like my phone. I do feel like it's a rude thing to have out, or I typically like have it inside my bag or something, just because I know how I feel when people have like their phones around and like how they're trying to check it, or as soon as you turn away, they check it, and you don't feel like a priority for that person when you're there. But I mean, I've never really tied it with like leadership skills, but this video like helped me understand how those two can connect with each other. So yeah, I really like the video.
And I think it can help you to interpret the leaders that you work for, right? You kind of gives you some signals about what type of a leader they are. And actually, Ruby, the link is in Canvas. It's right there. It's all
Okay,
in there
perfect.
for
Yeah.
this week. So keeping that in mind, you could see that he talks about, how important it is for the leader to create the culture, but it's also important for that leader to be consistent. It's something that's important. JC?
Yeah, I was gonna actually mention that right off the uh, I thought that it was like the importance that he placed on like the day to day, like in and out, like I feel like for myself, there's a tendency to feel like you just want to go through the motions and stuff like that. And I feel like that's kind of a widely held experience, but also like it's important to remember that like little things do add up. And so like that's a really good reminder to like, hey, like the conduct you have today influences the conduct you have tomorrow, influences what you have the next day. And like you don't just get to being like a good, you don't just get good like to develop the skills needed to be good at things in the workplace or in just life in general by just all of a sudden waking up and decide, okay, I'm going to be amazing at literally everything. Like it takes a while to build that muscle, if you will. And so, like, yeah.
And I think he acknowledged that in the beginning when he talked about leaders needing to meet new employees where they are, because you can't expect them to jump in and be, at the same level as people that have been part of the culture that you've established the relationships with. And, we talk about the importance that leaders, one of the most important things a leader can do is to really wrap around new employees, right? Make sure they become, engrossed in the culture, make sure they feel seen and heard, make sure they feel supported, because otherwise you're going to have a turnover and you're going to lose good people all the time. They're not going to stay if they don't feel cared for. Even when I'm working with my grad students, we talk about one of the most important things, regardless of the institution you're working in, is relationships, right? And those relationships determine so much of what happens and the quality of what happens in our workplace, regardless of where we are. So with that in mind, let's start talking about it though from your point of view. So what do you need to know about leadership? Let's see if I can do this correctly. So I think it's important for you to absolutely be able to think about, okay, I'm going to be moving into a new situation, a professional kind of situation. What am I going to need to know about the leaders I'm going to be working with? So I think one of the things that we have to really remember is that leaders, first of all, are all human, okay? And that's really important to think about because just because they have some sort of a title or they have some sort of an office is that, they are really human beings first. And I think we tend to lose that perspective. We tend to think if someone's in a leadership role, well, they're different or they're immune or they're hardened. And we expect them to be very confident and be very consistent. But really and truly, they are the same as the rest of us. They have blind spots, they have stress in their lives, they have imposter syndrome, they feel insecure. And so a lot of times it's shaped by their personal values, but it's also shaped by the fact that leaders also have leaders above them, right? There's other people they report to, the other people that they work with. And when you think about it, the leaders are absolutely just like you and I. They have good days and they have bad days. I was at a meeting yesterday with one of the leaders at North Central, um, and she was absolutely, positively, she's a wonderful leader, but she was having a terrible day. All kinds of issues going on in her life with her parents. Health issues and things that are very serious that she's dealing with. And it was so obvious that she was struggling so hard to be there for us at this meeting while her whole personal life is just falling apart, right? So remembering that leaders can have good days and bad days is really important, and we need to treat them that way. So the important thing I think that I would take away is that it's important not to take everything that happens with leaders personally. Though kind of read the room, read the situation, figure out what's happening in their life that might be causing them to actually be, acting a certain way at work. But I think really keeping in mind that they're human beings just like us. So the other thing I think that's important to know that just because they have a title or just because they're in a position of authority does not automatically mean that they're wise leaders. Um, when you think about it, and I've had a lot of experience with leaders over the years, but some of the people that I really admire most as leaders don't have any real important fancy titles. Um, but they are people that quietly lead, maybe from behind, maybe from where they are. And each of you has that potential. As soon as you move into your professional roles, you can be a quiet leader from where you are. Because if you are working on your competence, if you're building trust with the people that you work with, and you demonstrate care, you're really on the road to becoming that kind of a leader. It's also important to think about, some people that have authority shouldn't, right? They abuse it. They neglect the people in their care. There are leaders we know that avoid responsibility and place blame on others. There are some leaders that really lead from a place of fear. They're afraid they're going to lose their job. They're afraid of their bosses. And sometimes they are more worried about complying with rules and regulations rather than helping you to learn and to grow and coaching you in your role. So what you need to do is think about what it says here to keep in mind. You want to make sure that you respect the role that these people are in. But don't confuse that with the fact that they must be perfect, that they have the right moral compass, or that they actually have the right idea of authority, that they're doing things for the right reasons. We talk about practicalism is doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, not necessarily just doing something. I think another thing to keep in mind is that leaders are rewarded by what they produce. You could kind of get the impression from Simon Sinek, he was talking about business and medicine, but leaders really get rewarded for results, right? They don't always get rewarded for being a good person, for having a good character, for having a moral compass. Many times you're going to be in a situation, you're going to be working with people that are looking for, things to be done quickly, to give me results. Don't worry about relationships. All about metrics, right? Especially if you're moving into any kind of businesses. And so that is scary, and that's the system that they're operating within. But that also doesn't mean that they get away with it, right? That doesn't mean that they can be inconsistent or they can be quick with their thinking. So you really have to not only understand your leader, but you have to understand the system that they're working in. Okay. And that's going to be different. Every one of those situations is going to be different. And it's going to take you time to be acutely aware of the circumstances and trying to figure out that you don't want to be shaped by the poorest tendencies there. Sometimes when you move into the workplace, it's really good to kind of just keep yourself a little bit aloof and figure out the lay of the land. And in plain terms, figure out the politics because you don't want to get into the wrong side of some of those. And there's politics in every single role that you will ever be in every single organization you'll ever be in. So get the lay of the land before you jump in, before you decide to take sides or be, recruited by one side versus another side, that kind of thing. It's a rare situation. It does happen. It's a rare situation to be working in an environment where everyone gets along and everyone pulls together and there's a great culture. But you may or, throughout your career, you'll probably experience both of those. So you want to be very careful about understanding the system and understanding the leader before you kind of get in there and let it shape you. Does that make sense? I think the other thing too is that leaders are always watching. They're always watching you, even if you don't think so. They're really, really focused on those of you that are early in your career because these are people that they're looking at. Do we want to keep them in our organization? Do we want to move them into our organization and move up the ladder? And so when you think about it, it's just like we say when you were taking education classes that students are always listening, regardless of whether or not you intend to teach something. They're looking at you and they're learning from you, whether or not you are intentional about it. I think it's the same way with leaders. So it's important to think about, okay, when they give you feedback, they're watching to see how you accept feedback. They're watching to see carefully how you handle it. Are you gracious with it? Do you actually take that feedback and do something about it? Do you ask questions to understand more depth about it? They're also really watching about how you talk about your colleagues. That tells a lot about a person. As a leader, if I hear somebody talking kind of negatively about someone they work with, that's a red flag for me because relationships are the key. Relationships lay the foundation for what we are going to be as a culture. And the other thing that they look at is who takes responsibility when things go wrong. There are people who say, yeah, that was me. That was my mistake. I'm so sorry. I will not do that again. I'm going to make a note. I understand that's a mistake. There are other people that say, well, it happened because so-and-so did this, or that person did this, or this happened over here. Not my fault. And also, that's something that they're watching for because they want someone of good character who's going to own up to when they make a mistake and learn from it. Because we all make mistakes, right? We all have responsibilities that we have to handle and we have to manage. So they're looking at you, how do you react when they're talking to you about these things? How do you handle it when things are very ambiguous? And that happens in every role, in every job. There's gray areas everywhere. So how do you navigate that? Are you afraid of it? Do you jump to one side? So when you think about it, they're watching you not to hope and pray that you're perfect because no one is. But they're looking at young people that they want to make sure stay within the system, stay within their company. And so they're looking at a pattern of how you carry yourself in the workplace. And that's important for you to remember that they're always, always watching. You might think it's a casual conversation by the coffee pot. You might think it's, joking around in the lunchroom or a gathering after work. They're still always watching how you handle yourself, how you talk about others, how you take responsibility, and just in general, what your character is like. So when you think about it, they're not really looking for, to be brilliant and competent and perfect, but they're looking for you to become reliable, to be humble, and to be willing to grow. And those are things that I think, as a leader, that's what I look for when people come to work with me. Another thing to think about is that not all leaders are good, right? Not all leaders are safe to be with. And it's important to be able to say that. There are things that new professionals don't always hear. Some leaders absolutely misuse their power. Some of them kind of normalize an uncivil environment or keeping quiet. We aren't going to talk about that. Some of them expect you to be loyal regardless of integrity. So this is something to be really careful about because you may be confused when you get into a new situation. Where are my loyalties? If there are things that start to feel in your gut that the behavior they're asking you to do is conflicting with what you know is ethical, right? Or what you've been taught. So when you feel that discomfort, that's actually data. And you need to notice it, you need to name it, and you need to seek guidance on it. And I think this slide is particularly important because when you think about it, there are absolutely places that we would consider toxic environments, toxic work environments. I have worked in them, and I'm sure in your career you will encounter something like that. So think about it, like really carefully looking at these. These are 11 really important signals. You know, is there an abusive leadership kind of thing happening on? Is there a lot of bullying or gossip going on? Are there things that are happening that kind of reinforce stereotypes or reinforce discrimination? Is there any kind of a harassment going on? Is there a culture of disrespect or people making fun of others, humiliating people? Is there a lack of support, a lack of resources, a lack of safety? Are there any hostile relationships there, interpersonal relationships? Are people neglected and excluded? Is that happening there? Are there some unhealthy boundaries? Are there aggressive, unsafe behaviors taking place? Or is there even, God forbid, workplace violence? All these things are kind of really big red flags that this is a toxic work environment. And this is something to be aware of, and it's important to know that that's really important data and that you should feel comfortable either seeking help or walking away from a toxic environment. Because if you're tied up into a toxic work environment, it will drain you mentally and physically, and it can actually make you ill. And that's something you want to make sure that you protect yourself against. You need to know that you have permission to take care of yourself, and no one should have to put up with a toxic work environment. The other thing to remember is that if you've got a really good leader, they want to learn from you because you're fresh in the field. You've got a new perspective, right? They want to know what you learned in your undergrad work. They want to know what you've learned that might be new and helpful to the field. So when you are looking at your leader, if they ask a lot of questions, that's good. They're wanting to learn from you. And if they are one of the kinds of leaders that I think are so important, the ones that say, I really don't know. And so they're just like you were taught as a teacher when a student asks a question. The important thing is honesty. I don't know, but I'll find that out. Let's figure this out together. Um, the other thing is that strong leaders will treat their interns and their new professionals, as somebody that's learning. So they know that that's really, they'll help you, they'll support your learning. So when you think about it, you want to work for someone in a leadership role that you can actually say this quote, I'd like to be that kind of person. I'd like to lead in that way. So it's important to think about leaders in terms of paying attention to those who really can help you professionally, not just the ones that impress you with their record of what they've done and what they've accomplished or their titles or their offices. Now, as you are looking at this, it's important to think about it. You will be moving into a leadership role and probably a lot faster than you think. Because even now in your internship, you can influence the culture. You can model ethical and moral behavior. You can speak up thoughtfully. You can support other people there. So when you think about it, you're really already practicing some leadership from where you are, whether or not you're intending to do that. And again, these things that are on the left-hand side of the screen are important. How do you want to be a powerful leader? Well, you want to embrace collective wisdom. So what is that? What is collective wisdom? Anybody have an idea about what they mean by collective wisdom?
I feel collective wisdom is just kind of a overall unity of some like smart strategies or ideas that can be important for anyone to think about and keep in mind in their back pocket.
Yeah. And I think the collective is the important word here, right? That we are together smarter than any of us are individually. So when there are situations, just like we did with the ethical dilemma a couple of weeks ago, right? We actually, when we look at it together, we're smarter and we come to better conclusions than each of us looking at it independently on our own. So when you think about it, when there are things that you need to make decisions about, getting a group together and making that decision, making sure you've got people that represent different viewpoints, different levels of experience, and make that decision together is really important. Um, Also, creating that culture of trust. It's a very long and uh, probably challenging road to build trust, right? It takes a lot of little steps, a lot of little things, and consistency to build a trust in the environment. It takes that to destroy the trust. All it takes is one bad move, one betrayal, and trust is gone. So the idea of, you know, thinking about the importance of building a culture of trust around you is really, really important. And then the whole idea of reciprocal learning. You should be learning from the leaders, but the leaders can also learn from you. You've got experiences, you've got more recent coursework, you've got more recent training. And so those ways there that when you think about it, if you understand that you're learning from them, but you can also help them learn some things as well. And then, supporting each other and challenging each other, that's how we grow. Looking at sharing responsibilities, creating a safe space for talking and dialogue, celebrating together is important. And then kind of just building that long-term relationship, those partnerships that will support you throughout your career. So you're going to be a leader a lot sooner than you think. Um, I like this quote. You will encounter leaders who inspire you, leaders who confuse you, and leaders who challenge your values. The goal isn't to copy any one leader, but to become the kind of person who can work with all of them without losing yourself. So what are your thoughts on that presentation? Have you thought about leadership this way before?
I feel like I have thought about a lot of like areas of leadership. I think especially in relation to who you're working with. Because I fully agree with you, Dustin, in that someone can be more genuine and honest than more like like a lot very intellectual, which is a good trait, but like perfection, expecting that that's just not gonna work for anybody. Especially if you're just starting a new position and you're just kind of learning things as you go. Um, a leader would probably expect you to not be as well experienced as others who have already worked with you in the past, or at an earlier point in time. So it's important as a leader to, use your best judgment appropriately and give them give them give them an idea of how things operate based on your experiences.
Right? Other thoughts?
When it came to leadership in the work environment, I I was like thinking about whether this is good leadership skills or not. I'm leaning towards no because I was remembering of a time when I worked like at a restaurant and there was a specific coworker that was kind of mean to like all the girls, but she was like the bartender there. So she brought in a lot of money to the restaurant. So our boss never really like because everybody would go complain to our boss about how she would make us feel and how like mean she was to us. But he never really would do anything to her. She was kind of like untouchable because she would bring in a lot of money. So it just created a really bad like work environment for everybody else, and everybody kind of just started quitting, and we felt like she had like no consequences because she was good at like bringing in the money. So I feel like our boss maybe didn't have the best leadership skills there because he allowed the rest of the workers to feel like not happy and like working in this toxic work environment, but I feel like he cared more about the sales than his workers.
And I think we talked about that on one of the slides where some leaders they're looking more at, okay, what are you producing? What are we making?
Yeah.
What's the profit here?
Mhm.
And they place that over people. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good example. And I would imagine that a lot of people left. Yeah.
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 Hmm.
Other thoughts about leadership?
I think for me, the biggest thing was, I guess really seeing that as like a new professional, just in a workplace, that you do have influence, on the place that you work. Because going off of, um, just what was said about leadership in the presentation, I think, I've heard all of that before, but I think the newest thing for me would be just that we do have influence and we can, bring positive change as new professionals um, to our place of work, and that, um, really anybody in a workplace, I guess, can be a leader, not in like a formal sense, but really we can all sort of lead, I guess, in our own way, and it sort of just makes the work environment, um, either what it is or, um, brings it to what it really can be, brings it to its
Yeah.
fullest potential, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it can really make it better, right? It can make it better by just bringing that positive, ethical, moral compass to the job. And I think that's what people, the mistake I think that people make are, there's the leaders and then there's us, like there's this divide. And in a really good culture, everybody's working together. Your leader is working just as hard as you are, in those situations. I think that's the danger of getting into the kind of the politics of workplaces. And I think when you're new, you're a new professional, you're going to if you come into an environment that has a political kind of divide, you're going to feel yourself being pulled because everybody wants to join their forces, and so you want to be very careful. You want to really understand the system and understand the situation. And I think the thing that's important is that you have the right to leave an environment if it's not working for you. Um, there's nothing worse I can imagine than getting up every day and going somewhere that you absolutely don't like going to, and it gnaws at you, and it affects you in terms of your personality, it affects your mental health, it affects your physical health. So I think being, especially as a new young professional, you have the opportunity that sometimes people get locked in and they're there for so many years, then they're afraid to make a move. But I think as a young professional, the first job that you get may not be the one that settles well with you. It may not be where you feel you can grow or you're respected or that it's comfortable. So you shouldn't be afraid to change. You shouldn't be afraid to say, this isn't for me. I'm going to look for something else. And sometimes people look for something else because of money or because of titles. Um, but that's not always the best reason to make a move, right? Because um, more money and a title isn't going to make it easier to go to work every day if you're dreading going to work or you don't really value the people you're working with or you don't feel valued. So as a young professional, you're at a point in your life where you have more flexibility to make that move than, say, perhaps other people do. Um, you can be brave and do it. I made a move after 20 years at one particular institution. It had started out to be a wonderful place to work, but over time, the culture changed, the leadership changed, and my health and my well-being was more important than having, how many years I've been in the job, right? So coming to a better environment, making a move you can do it at any point in your life, but I think you should be really encouraged to do that kind of thinking early in your career. Okay, so since you liked Simon Sinek, I'm going to show one more of his little videos about leadership because I think he helps you to think about leadership in a way that maybe you haven't thought about before. So let me get into Canvas here and get into our module and open that one.
What if you could clean your retainer at the touch of a button?
Give me 1 second here. Obviously, we're going to get an ad in here when I do this. So
No more brushing or tablets. Over 4 years ago, our team.
Just like there's no such thing as an expert leader, just like there's no such thing as an expert parent, right? All of these things are journeys, and you're always a student parent, you're always a student leader. And the best leaders, the best parents, they're constantly learning, they're constantly finding new resources, they're reading books, they're reading articles, they're watching TED Talks, whatever it is, more information, they're having conversations with their friends, right? The best leaders, the best parents. And it's the same with friends, which is you have to learn how to have a difficult conversation. You have to learn how to listen. You have to learn how to have an effective confrontation. If your friend has done something that hurt your feelings, can you bring it to their attention in a way that they will hear you rather than just defend themselves and fight with you? Like, do we know how to hold space for our friends in a time of need? You know, like I was struggling and I called up a friend and said, hey, can I just talk to you? And I told them what I was going through and they started trying to fix me. And I, thank goodness that you can tell people in the middle, be like, I don't need solutions. I need you to just listen.
Listen.
But most of us, well-intentioned, we go to fix. Men are particularly bad, right? We go to fix when sometimes all somebody needs is for you to sit in mud with me and make me feel not alone. That's all I need. And so most of us don't have those skills. And when you talk about translating them into work, right? If somebody's got struggles at home, their marriage is on the fritz, their kids are acting out, I don't know, you're in a, you know, there's a towering inferno a couple miles to the east, right? You think that doesn't come to work? So screaming and yelling at somebody, why haven't you made your numbers, is not helpful. Empathy is the thing we have to practice. I'll give you a real scenario that can happen at work, how empathy exists, right? So let's take a real life scenario. Somebody missed their numbers, right? So we walk into their office, call them up, whatever it is. Hey, I noticed you missed your numbers for the third quarter in a row. You got to pick up your numbers in the fourth quarter. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. You got to hit your numbers. Like, that's fairly normal. Yeah. Now let's inject empathy. Dare I call it friendship into that scenario? Hey, your numbers are down for the third quarter in a row. We've talked about this before. Are you okay? What's going on? I'm worried about you. Right? That will get you a more honest answer of where they're struggling.
Then the person can
so
open
that
up
we can
back
help.
with you.
But so we can help.
They wouldn't be defensive in that scenario.
So we can help.
So we can
Exactly.
help them.
So we can help them, right? If
Yeah.
somebody is struggling, we can help them. But if they can't tell us and we don't know how to listen and we don't know how to ask and we don't know how to confront and we don't know how to have empathy, then we're going to get no information and that tension is going to get worse and worse and worse until somebody quits or gets fired.
So how about the best leader that you've ever personally had?
The best leader that I've had, two people come to mind for different reasons. Dennis was my leader back in young in my career, and this is when I learned about behavior over accomplishment. I was a young account executive at a big ad agency, and new business pitches were done by the senior leaders. It was the end of the year, and all the senior leaders had gone away on their holiday vacations, and me and another junior person who were assigned to work on this pitch were told, prep the war room. And, you know, so when all the senior folks come back, they can do the pitch. Prepping the war room means hang the research on the walls. That takes an hour, right? Okay. We had a week to kill. So we just decided to do the pitch ourselves. Like, we combed through the data, we found an insight, we wrote the deck, came up with the strategy, the whole thing. And when the senior leaders came back, we were like, we finished, you know, like we did the whole deck. And they used our pitch. They used our strategy in the pitch, and we lost the business.
Oh boy.
We did not win the pitch. And my boss gave me a huge promotion. They didn't just move me up one level, they moved me up 2 levels in one night. And what he was doing was rewarding my behavior, not my accomplishment.
Interesting.
Because I took initiative. He was rewarding my initiative. And you know what he gets when he rewards my initiative? More initiative. If he said to me, look, great work, but you didn't hit it, so sorry.
Yep.
I would never have shown any initiative after that, because why would I?
Right.
Or I would just play it safe, you know? So one thing I learned was reward the behavior you want to be repeated. And so that was a big lesson for me. But probably the single best leader I ever had was a guy named Peter Intomaggio. Peter never answered a single question I asked him. It was so annoying. Peter, I don't know what to do. What do you think we should do? Well, I think we should do this. Then I think you should do that. Peter, something's horribly wrong. What do I do? I don't know. What do you think you should do? I just like, so annoying. In the moment, I couldn't see it. I just thought just answer my please. I'm asking you because I don't know. Isn't that obvious? But what he taught me was self-reliance. What he taught me was self-confidence, and what he taught me was accountability. Because when things went horribly wrong, he taught us that you couldn't go in and be like, it got screwed up. You said, I screwed it up. You didn't go and say, they screwed it up. You said, it got screwed up on my watch. Like he taught us accountability, but we never got yelled at. I never got yelled at when something went sideways. Even he would sometimes get stressed, but he would say, well, how are you going to fix it?
Yeah.
And I always knew that he had my back, but he always made me do it. And it was the single best leader I ever had.
And have you implemented that same way of
Yeah.
working with your teams?
Yeah, I mean, as best I can. I mean, I'm human, but yes, I'm pretty good about being laissez-faire, and I'm okay if people screw things up as long as they take it. Where I become difficult if somebody doesn't take accountability. That it got screwed up. Really? It just happened? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, the market. Uh, yeah, so I love accountability. I love when people say, it's kind of like go back to our Marine Corps friend here. The Marines say, no greater friend, no greater enemy, right? Like if you take accountability, I will be by your side no matter how bad it is, and I will help you fix it, and I will look after you, and I'll protect you. You lie to me or don't take accountability, I'm going to be asking you so many uncomfortable questions because I know what's going on, and so do you, and I will just keep noodling at you. Probably not a good leadership quality, but it's I love accountability.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have to model it. I can't expect people to do it if I don't model it. So I'm the first person to say I screwed up. I'm the first person to say was this happened on my watch. I'm the first person to say I shouldn't have given you that. That is on me. I am so sorry. I am the first person to own every mistake, every screw up. The buck stops here every time because I cannot expect somebody to do something if I'm not willing to do it.
So thoughts about that? Same guy from the beginning, but now talking about it a little differently. What are your reactions?
Hearing that perspective, I think it's very it was very interesting, knowing that some mistakes happen instead of just trying to be confrontational about it. We just kind of, um, understand that, okay, this person made a mistake. Instead of yelling at them like, oh, this is your fault, we simply ask, okay, how can we fix this? Like, how can we, uh, how, what can we do to solve this issue? And I think that,
It doesn't give
yeah,
you carte blanche to go out and make mistakes, right? But
right.
it's the importance of, I think the word accountability is that he uses over and over again is critical, right? And we know that, people that are not the strongest leaders are the ones that kind of push things away, and it's someone else's fault, and they never take responsibility for it. And I think the point he made about having to model it as a leader is really important as well. If you expect your employees to be open and honest and accountable for things that happen, and you expect them to grow, you don't always give them the answers, right? You help them to kind of grow into that. It's like anything else. When you were studying in education, you learned a lot about how you have to meet children where they are. It's called differentiation, right? It's no different in the workplace. They're just bigger kids. And people have to, leaders have to really and truly differentiate for the people in their care. And you, as a professional, need to differentiate for the people around you and for the leaders around you. There will be some strong leaders, there will be some experienced leaders, there'll be some who are fumbling through, and some that really aren't. But you have to kind of understand that we're all on a continuum of growth in terms of how we are developing personally and professionally. And, just as you can't walk into a classroom at a field experience and say, everybody here should be able to do everything the same way at the same time in the same way, that's that's not the reality of the world. So I think one of the things I want to convey is that a lot of the training that you've had in your education courses are going to be really beneficial in the workplace. A lot of people go into the workplace without any of that kind of understanding, and they kind of fall flat. I even see it, in the universities I've worked at. You get people that come in that are they're just a specialist in one area, and that they may not be the best teachers, right? They understand the content, they're brilliant, but they don't have those skills of understanding how to meet people and help them to learn it. Sometimes if you know something so well, it's really hard to explain it, right? When I was a principal, I always looked for people that had a couple of B's and C's on their transcripts, because I think if someone came in that had a 4.0 that was straight A student, they probably couldn't relate to a child who struggled. And I think, those children that struggle grow up into adults who may struggle in the workplace, right? And so as a leader, I think as a new professional, you've got a lot of information, you've got a lot of experience, you've got a lot of knowledge that is really transferable into these roles that you're looking at. And I think it's important to do that. And I think it's, my background is leadership. That's what I teach, mainly is leadership. And I think you really need to understand the leaders around you. And you have to understand that you actually are leading from where you are every single day.
Yeah, fully understand that and agree with that. And I just from an example, I from work, it's like I brought up to my area manager, saying, hey, if you if you're seeing that I'm making a mistake or not following the guidelines for this organization, please let me know so that I can uh understand better the rules, and that we can try to find sort of compromise or a way to fix, or a way for me to fix whatever is the issue if it's become a big problem.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording that I forgot to stop because we recorded because some of you